Morning, everyone. We might just wait another couple of minutes just to see whether we get a couple of stragglers join us. What we might do is we might get a start there. Um, Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. Today we are presenting a webinar on Tosibox. We have Mark Dilshirt from Tosibox joining us this morning. Tosibox are an established control store partner. We've been working with Tosibox for a number of years now, representing their product in the HVAC market. Tosibox provide simple and secure remote connectivity solutions, particularly applicable in the HVAC, building management, and automation spaces. Um, As always, we will be doing a short Q&A towards the end of the session. So if you do want to pop any of your questions into the Q&A menu at the top of your screen, feel free and we'll run through them at the end. I do just want to remind everybody that this is a session that will be recorded. You've probably got the prompt there on your screen mentioning that for you. After this, we will also be putting this webinar up onto the Control Store YouTube channel. So if you haven't subscribed to that, please feel free to find us on YouTube and put a like and subscribe on our channel. That'd be greatly appreciated. Without much further ado, I might welcome Mark into the chat.
Matt, thank you very much. And yeah, good morning, everybody. Good to have you on board for today's session. This was a session that when I chatted with the Control Store team, we thought about taking a little bit of a different approach. So you'll see today's topic is Tosibox platform, but in business processes for effective IP and asset management. So now what we're going to be doing in today's session is we're going to have a look at a little bit on how the Tosibox platform works for those that are either using a component of it or looking to get into a more sustainable solution that covers your cybersecurity, covers your access control. We've got hardware and software options on the edge and gives you the ability to build out a future from cyber policies. Having a look at technology is only as good as understanding at how it applies into your business. So I had a meeting recently with a client that is using our technology, using all the different components. And what was evident throughout the discussion was the fact that the client was struggling to apply how their business processes came in to how the technology was used. So that they had struggling points where they could have been using Tosibox in a more efficient and effective manner within their business by just understanding those business processes. So we're going to bring that in. I've got a couple slides on some examples of business processes that I've put down on a page, and we'll talk in a little bit more detail, hopefully covering something around something you can relate to in your business. And yeah, let's have a look at it. So let's get on to the next slide. We're going far forward there. Sorry. There we go. So let's start with a little bit of the strength side of things. So Tosibox is an organization founded in 2011. The founding principles, as Matt mentioned, was around remote access. In today's environment, remote access is really just a subcategory of what we're doing in our architecture. And it's really around building a network infrastructure of different components. Those components can be assets out in the field for multiple different customers that you might be owning and managing. You might be the end customer who has to set up an asset list of this infrastructure and so forth. You've then got applications. So this is the software that's driving those assets from an efficiency, from a visualization, from an operational excellence, and understanding and putting context to what those assets are doing. And then the third component is the human element. So that's really coming in, people connecting to business, connecting into applications, connecting into those assets. Going beyond that, when we join up those different components, it gets into a little bit more value around saying remote access is one portion. What about the infrastructure that allows you to do convergence? So bringing everything into a central database and central point. Think about it. You might have 30, 40, 50 sites. Where's the efficiency in managing data on each and every one of those sites? Why not do it from a centralized perspective? So network strengths for Tosibox has 6 different components at the moment. Those 6 components are on your screen, covering automated cybersecurity. So no longer having to worry about setting up or managing anything in the cyber environment. Anyone configuring firewalls, anyone setting up VPN tunnels, anyone managing encryption layers. These are all components of the Tosibox ecosystem that are just automated and done for you. So by using the technology, all of that is covered. So we have clients on a regular basis that set up our technology as per the quick start guide, and then they're looking to configure these components. We're saying, don't worry, we got it covered. The second side is then having a look at the scalability and flexibility. So getting benchmarked against other technologies, bring your own device environment with things like 4G routers. This is where the flaws start coming in that they struggle with the scalability and flexibility. And that can be from complexity in architecture, or that can just be from a point of view of the manual processes to configure a unit, which is easy when you've got one. But what happens when you've got multiple, there's more and more complexity as that ecosystem grows. And then the flexibility, as you'll see as we go into this presentation, around users linking to applications and assets and being able to create that environment that suits your business processes. The secure remote access, I think we've touched on, and the importance of that is we're not an application layer security. We're a physical cyber security solution. So what does that mean? Even in software form for a user workstation, for instance, our software attaches itself to the security on that machine, making it tamper-proof and controlling who's got access to the environment. So it's not just one of those of, okay, log on to this domain, here's the username and password, and you've got access. That almost defeats the object of what we're trying to achieve in the cyber secure world. Then going further from historically looking at just remote access, now in today's environment with the Tosibox platform, looking at managing your data and integration. So imagine a world where you've got scattered assets. They could be all over the country, they could be all over the region, they could be all over the world. And against that, you're able to create a layer 2, layer 3 network infrastructure with the Tosibox platform that allows you to bring all of this together into a single architecture. There's no limitations. We don't worry about convergence. We don't worry about devices talking to each other or not talking to each other. It's how you decide that to look within the Tosibox access groups and ecosystem, which allows you to build out the flexibility in your organization. You can then layer on that all your databases and all the other information you need, and I will show you what that looks like. Then going into two important aspects. So the one is user access management. So we have a lot of discussions on how we manage internal and external users, how we give users access for time periods or activity-based things. And that's all done within the Tosibox platform, allowing you to slice and dice that without the concern of saying, well, okay, I've got to use VLANs on site, create another layer of complexity just to segment the user access side. Within the Tosibox world, you've got that defined network access on site, and you're able to define those access and viewing rights within the access groups in the Tosibox platform. And then last but not least, IT, OT, I think is a hot topic. It always will be. Everyone has a different view around that. If you talk to some people, we recently had an IT conference in Melbourne at an event called CyberCon, which is one of the big cybersecurity conferences here in Australia. And segmentation within that was a big topic. And again, for the Tosibox side, we have different layers of segmentation. It could be IT, OT segmentation on the edge between enterprise networks and a manufacturing plant. It can be IT, OT segmentation where we built a converged network and it's integrating in DMZ. Or it could be IT, OT segmentation within the cloud and business processes environment. The importance there is Tosibox covers all those different layers and allows you to choose where you want to do it. And I'd say what you've got to understand first is what does the environment look like that you're going into? So when we then have a look at the environment and going on to the next slide here, and that gone one too far, there we go. We start nowadays in a lot of our discussions with clients around having a look at a reference architecture. Now you'll notice on your screen that the reference architecture is very much driven around all the different facets of what we're having to deal with. So there's the enterprise IT component, there's the cloud and virtualized services component, and then there's the OT manufacturing and operational technology component. And within this, every single client, every single market, and every single user of Tosibox will have a different approach on where they fit into this. And that's okay. Okay. The importance of it is Tosibox allows you to fit in and achieve what you need to get out of it through accessing your assets, through convergence within your environment, while still using enterprise IT WAN networks, enterprise IT PCs and access, integration into other systems. You might have a third-party vendor or some API integration that's needed, and that's good. It's just understanding how that's done. You talk to us, you talk to our pre-sales teams, and we will assist you in that journey in drawing this out in your environment and documenting what your architecture then would look like. If we go quickly into the different components of the architecture, we're going to talk about the node or edge layer with the Tosibox hardware and software options. We're going to talk about the user access, both from an OT side as well as an IT side, which funny enough is exactly the same software. It's just how it's configured. Then we're going to talk about two components of the Tosibox platform, being the Tosibox hub, where all the convergence and automated routing, access control, and magic happens. And then we're going to talk about the Tosi control, which is that visual layer. And then once we've gone through these processes, then I'm going to bring that now down into a standardized business model that we're going to show you, and hopefully can start relating to how you see it in your environment. So looking on the edge at the Tosibox components, the edge was designed by Tosibox to have an off-the-shelf device that gave you all the different features and functions, okay, but removed a layer of complexity. Especially when you're going into environments where you've got a multi-tool individual, it could be an engineer, could be mechanical, electrical, whatever it may be, doing this installation. There's not necessarily that network or IT specialist. There's not necessarily someone who understands what's needed from the IT, OT segmentation, or whatever it may be in the environment. So the Tosibox device allows you to then have that device on the edge, we've covered the firewall, we've covered the access control, the tunneling, the encryption, the security certificates, and you're able to do that on any internet connection. So there's not another layer of complexity that comes in because you've got 4G on one side and you've got enterprise WAN on the other side. The approach is exactly the same. We manage that side in our automated processes. These devices can then go in there, get assigned an admin user, and the rest of the process is easy to build out. So we've simplified that edge. We've also secured the edge. So this is a device that is hardened and secured, secure boot feature and everything that goes on. So we have discussions where clients go, oh yeah, that looks like the 4G router that I use. No, it's not. This is a security device. And I think that's really the differentiator on where we need to draw a line in the sand on guys using BYOD solutions, okay, and configuring one of the security principles. One of them doesn't get you secure. All of them gets you secure as a hardened device. So you've got to be able to tick off all of those, not just from a point of view of what you've achieved on the installation, but also the sustainability on the ongoing management of that. And that's where the automated processes comes in. Then having a look, there's multiple different units available. Over the years, we had a much larger variety of edge devices, and that wasn't really any advantage to the market. So we've spent some time now refining them, and we've now got it refined down to the 100 series with the 175 for those entry-level devices, energy management, 102 IP connections, and those low-cost energy spaces. Then going on to the 300 series with the 350 and 375, more functionality, digital I/O, more Ethernet connections, stronger coverage on the 4G side if you're inside panels, and you've got the ability to do away with things like unmanaged switches in the panel and that type of stuff with using those devices. Throughput, outcome, user interface, exactly the same across those products. Then going on to the 600 series, faster throughputs, dual SIM functionality, gigabit LAN ports, higher temperature range. So everything just increases higher, and it's choosing around what suits your application for whether you're taking the top devices or the bottom devices. And then that range topples out at our 695, which is our 5G unit. So for anyone looking to get into the 5G market and future-proof that already, we have a device to suit your application there. So that gives you a little bit of insight there. There is also a software version of this called the LFC, which is a Dockerized solution. If anyone has an understanding or is looking to use something like that, please reach out to me and let's have a discussion on it, because it's always weighing up whether you go with a virtualized software component versus the hardware components. There are advantages and disadvantages. I normally talk that out with the clients, understand what they're looking to achieve, but also highlight on doing it with the least amount of complexity so that they're not sitting with a bird's nest on the edge. Last but not least, you'll notice on the bottom right-hand side, we reference the Tosibox Edge. So that's a new device in development. It'll be ready in Q1 of 2025. And that's where we're bringing the containerized environment as well as our hardware devices into a single architecture to allow us now to run containers within the Tosibox hardware application to add more value to clients, reduce the amount of space and components in their architecture and in their panels, but not have to worry about the complexity that it gets involved with building out as you go north. So then having a look at saying, well, we've built out on the edge components, we're then going into users. So users in the Tosibox world, whether it's an operational technology user or whether it's an IT and processes-based user, looks exactly the same. It's available in hardware or software options. So you'll notice there's the USB crypto key there. There's software that runs on your machine. There's apps that run on your phone, iOS and Android. And all of these versions, again, are pre-configured multi-factor or two-factor authentication, that trust relationship between the user and the environment they're authenticated to see. data encryption, tunneling, different platforms of support. We've got that all covered. So we're removing that need to have to worry about, is it compatible? Okay. Is it configured correctly? Am I secure? And especially in today's environment where business owners and organizations are held accountable for cybersecurity, why take the risk in trying to do it yourself? Why take the risk in thinking you can save a dime here or there by just doing a little bit of configurations yourself? Let the Tosibox ecosystem cover it for you. So that's the user side of things. Those components are configured to suit the user needs. So whether you're an admin user, whether you're a sub user, or you're just accessing an IP device, it's all in the configuration. We'll see a little bit more around that. Then moving north of that, where we look at that convergence layer and we have a look at the Tosibox Hub. This is an element as part of the platform that allows you to build out that scalability. It allows you to build out that IT, OT integration. It allows you to bring in users, devices, applications, and set up a private network. So you would have heard this before. Telcos might have spoken about your private 4G network. We're doing this within your environment. So it's your true private network. We don't care what type of internet connection you use, but it's built back to your private space. Could be private or public cloud that you're using, could be an on-premise server, doesn't matter. It's in your environment, you're in control. And I think at this point, it's also important to mention the Tosibox architecture and how we build out from a securities perspective is fully open and agnostic. So what that means is it doesn't matter what type of OEM device you're using on the asset side. It doesn't matter what form of or type of protocol. We have clients, Modbus TCP, MQTT, and all these different discussions around protocol. We're not worried about that. And the importance of mentioning that is the fact that we don't physically touch the data. So we're the infrastructure for those data packets to travel up and down, okay? But we don't get involved in actually seeing the data. And that's part of the cybersecurity side. The second important side is there's no Tosibox domain that you're going to configure this environment in. As I mentioned, this hub and environment runs within your ecosystem, so you're in control of it. On the right-hand side at the top is typically what that ecosystem looks like. So it's still very much a networking style. It relates to the assets. It relates to the list of all the different devices, but it allows you to build up an ecosystem of convergence and have a user-friendly way of bringing in your users, your assets, your access groups, and everything into there. And also allows you from there to do LAN site networking within a virtual space or on your enterprise connection or whatever it may be. So this is your management layer. This is your built-in and automated cybersecurity layer from a point of view of all those devices coming together. You can then start doing access control lists where you can say, I've got an IP on that side and an IP on that side. Could be two controllers in completely opposite directions that you want to talk to each other. You can create an access group and you can get those two IPs to talk together. So it's as easy as just joining the dots between those over the same infrastructure that you've already built. So this is where the value starts coming in. We've then got the monitoring and alerts. We've got different VLAN capabilities. There's full audit logs, and depending on how far you want to go into the audit logs, we've got integration with SysPro, we've got integration with Prometheus, and there's so many other things that if you want to get into more detail or you've got an IT department that's looking for these log reports, that is all available for you to integrate. You can see on the bottom right-hand side the different virtualized and cloud services that we support. So again, if you're looking at the reference architecture and how you want to get involved in that, talk to us and let's have a look and see what we can do for you. Okay, so now moving north to the last part within the IT side. So we touched on the user access side within the IT perspective. Let's just touch quickly on the access around that. So we deal with enterprise users that have enterprise PCs that are performing OT functions. And I'd just like to highlight that from an access to the bottom layer, from an access to assets, we can provide anyone access. Where it starts changing is when that user is looking to start doing configuration changes on a controller or a PLC or a drive or something like that. And at that point, as soon as they're needing to do that, that's where the IP of their machine has to change. That's where they're needing to go from more DHCP on enterprise IT layer onto fixed IP on that workstation. And that's often the biggest restriction because of the fact that those enterprise IT machines are locked down and the user doesn't have the administration rights to do that. And unfortunately, in that space, there's nothing that Tosibox can assist you with there. So it's understanding, do you have the access to be able to change that? Or is there a separate workstation needed in order to do that? And that's really the differentiator, that top space, what needs to happen. For Tosibox, then going into the management, the visualization, and the understanding, we have two components. So we have what's called the Tosibox or Tosi Control. Tosi Control is our next generation user experience around visualization on the platform. So you saw the hub, you saw the long lists. As your ecosystem grows, the lists get longer. And we have a lot of partners that are managing hundreds and thousands of network connections. And they asked us to develop a tool that gives them a better visualization and management, and also allows their IT department to see what's going on, from who has access, okay, who that person is, which is an important part, because if you're using a key, that's just a number. You still don't know who's got that number. So it starts linking up again your cyber policies around identity, who the person is, email address in relation to what they've got access to. So here you can now start seeing the change in user interface around a more interactive that allows you to configure your networks, your users, your devices, your user licenses, and have everything in a central point there. And it also allows you to do multiple. So if you're a service provider and you're managing multiple client networks, you can have multiple client networks in there, and you can go into them individually, and they're all segmented. So that's part of managing the device firmware updates and seeing what's going on there, the user access from a key subscription side, as well as who that user is. Then last but not least, a new component launched at CyberCon 2 weeks ago in beta testing with some local market clients is our new Tosi NDR layer. So this is a layer driven around the activity and performance, net flow monitoring of what's going on the OT assets, as well as providing a layer of anomaly detection, risk mitigation and management, and overall performance. When this layer was developed, it was really around having a look at how we can create a single view. We've got a couple different customer criteria here. We've got criteria around CISO, CTO, business owner looking to have a look at overall status. We've got a criteria here around operational OT and ICS people. We've got a criteria around IT people. And this technology was designed to bring all of those together so that everyone has a facet that suits their business processes, suits their job in what they're needing to achieve. But the importance is still the same network infrastructure. So you're not having to buy an additional hardware component. You're not having to send people out to do an additional integration component. There's a software engine that comes in that bolts onto the hub, and done, you're good to go. And against that, it allows you to start then getting into more detail on visuals around the performance of that network, what the devices are doing, what the nodes are doing, what the protocols are doing. And when I talk about protocols throughout all of these on the devices, please highlight, again, we're not physically looking at the data. So we've got a unique technology that uses mathematical equations to create statistical analysis that determines where we pick up the irregularities on the performance of the network, on the performance and what goes on with those devices to then create this data. That mathematical equation, calculation, whatever you want to look at it, is also designed in a very lightweight manner. And this is how we're able to run it on our existing devices that I showed you on one of the previous screens. So this is the overall health status dashboard designed for high level. Have a look, just see what's the overall status. Then drilling deeper from an operational perspective, you can now start going into overall network performance. You can start going into individual node performance. You can start getting involved in physical communication of devices. Have you got a device that's broadcasting on a layer 2 and just slamming the network with data? And is it affecting other devices? So this is where you start getting that insight in the overall network. You can drill into each and every one of those nodes, as you can see on the flat network architecture there. And within that, you can start having a look into more detail, those devices. What are those devices doing? Who are those devices communicating with? What's up? What's down? And for anyone on the call that uses a product like Wireshark, for instance, this is the next step in that development, but running permanently, that you're not having to go and wait for the fault to happen. We will pick that up along the way, and you'll be able to go back in time in order to see when it's happened and pick up those irregularities. Then linked to that, we all deal with our IT departments, our customers' IT departments, and they're all looking for a solution. It was highlighted at CyberCon that IT has a huge need for this environment, and they still struggle with how they deal with OT as that almost external component to their ecosystem. And this allows them to have that insight into the assets, allows them to see what's going on risk and event driven wise, and give them insight to get them comfortable with what's going on, as well as give them a common ground to then engage with the OT side of their business or engage with the client's OT side to say, listen, we've got risks. There's risks related to specific assets. The controller needs a software update. There's a risk on the network on this device there, and so forth. It could be an internal or external event. It could be a device that's pushing out data to China, Russia, or somewhere it's not meant to be going. And this event-driven engine allows you to then monitor and see what's going on. You can see the traffic light system on the right-hand side. That's depicting 365 days of the year. So that allows you to then start picking up that, oh, hold on a second, it's happening every Wednesday at a certain time. That tells you again against that event what's going on. You can drive into that device and you can start picking up irregularities against that. Then the last side is the asset table. So we're all having to go into an environment. Assets cost money. Management of those assets takes time, and really understanding what's going on from an asset perspective. So we run a full network asset list with identifying what all the devices are, communication, risk highlights on software. Is it a PLC? Is it a drive? Is it a Siemens, Schneider, whatever it may be? And we identify through all of that through this asset management table, as well as identify the vulnerabilities that could possibly sit on that asset to say to you, oh, hold on a second, that PLC needs an update because there's 2 risk vulnerabilities on it. So it gives you further insight again. All auto-configured, so you're not having to go and set up all of these. This technology goes out and finds all of that information and brings it back into this engine. Okay, so enough about the architecture side. I'm hoping everyone's got a good general overview of the Tosibox ecosystem. If you have further questions, please, let's engage and have a discussion and make it relevant to your business processes. Now we're going to go into the business process side. So we've categorized 2 different areas. This was driven around a business partner that has got a contracting business, MSI, doing projects for clients, and they use our technology at the moment. And there was a question, how do we do this? Oh, but what about this? Oh, it's not doing that. And saying, but whoa, hold on a second. That's not a technology-driven thing. That's an understanding how it fits into your business processes. So against that, I've put together a little bit of a generic business flow here on a typical scenario where the client's getting in a new project. That project then goes on to installation phase, goes on to commissioning, and then after commissioning goes into DLP or defects liability period. And against that, I've brought in a couple touch points to have a chat on, as well as I've drawn out a little bit of a diagram below related to DLP, in that most, especially in the facilities management, building automation side of things, most is driven around, there's multiple different support organizations driven around that DLP period. So if an MSI comes into that environment, they're doing a project, it's not just them. There's subcontractors, there's mechanical contractors, there's consultants doing energy management, and there's a whole lot of different vendors in the ecosystem. And the technology that is used in that environment needs to be able to support all of those. So the first point when we come into the new project is always having an understanding, what are the cyber policies associated with that? And I think cyber policies, we track it from a global perspective, from a local perspective in Australia. And you've got things like the SOCI Act. You've got government chasing cyber policies to make organizations aware of what's needed to mitigate the risk, not only within their own organizations, but also within their clients' organizations. So if you're doing a project at the moment and you're just throwing a 4G modem or something on there, open ports, port forwarding, and it's quick and easy, and you're thinking that, oh, yeah, I'll just carry on like that, you're directly responsible. So start taking this seriously, because it can shut your business down. So from a Tosibox perspective, the importance here is we've standardized on an approach for you. So you've heard about different OEMs, you've heard about different silos. We can touch on energy management, we can touch on HVAC, and whatever you're dealing with in your space. And all of it is the same technology and approach. It's just how it's set up to suit your environment. So that allows you to standardize on your approach out to market. With that standardized approach, we have clients coming to us saying, oh, no, don't worry about it. We don't need it because our end client is giving us a VPN connection. Do you realize how much complexity you're taking on by taking on your client's VPN connections? That means that you're responsible again for managing the usernames and passwords and all the access around that, which again brings on another layer of complexity. So what about using the same technology and saying, well, Mr. Customer, we have our own approach to it. We manage that approach. It's ISO 27001. And against that, it will work in your business environment where we've got a win-win for both parties. And at the same time, it's fully agnostic, compatible to all OEMs as well as protocols. Okay, and that's the simplicity that we bring while doing that standardization, and guarantees you in your cyber policies that you haven't got any gray areas or something that you've got to manage on a risk factor by taking on something else. Then when we go into the installation, there's often different components. To the components that I've documented here is you've got the in-house engineering and the subcontracting portion. So at this stage now, people are looking for access on what they need to do. What we've seen from market is typically everyone runs off to site now. That costs time, that costs money, and you're focused on only being able to do one thing. So at this stage, we already have a look at saying, well, Tosibox or user key access should be granted. It could be for fact testing in a panel that hasn't been shipped to site yet, or whatever stage it may be on the installation. A lot of what happens on installations here is they're doing new installations and there's not even an internet connection on site yet. So our clients are using the Tosibox device with a 4G connection and saying, okay, great, we'll do the installation as well as that commissioning. And then once the client's got an internet connection on site, then we're able to take it off the 4G component and put it onto a WAN connection if it's getting integrated into the ecosystem. If it's not getting integrated and getting used as a standalone component, then it can just remain on its 4G side. And again, without an additional layer of complexity. Okay, so it shouldn't have to be complicated in how you're doing this. Then going on to the commissioning. So what we're seeing more and more is centralized commissioning teams. It could be within a specific location in Australia that are doing national projects, configuration of controllers, commissioning and testing of those devices. And yes, there will always be a component where someone needs to be on site, but for the most portion of it, okay, that can be done from a centralized location. So with the transparency and with the two-way communication that Tosibox does in their setup. You can sit and you can commission these devices from anywhere. Doesn't matter where the project and site is sitting, and you can just carry on doing it as if you were on site. That again can be granted to your in-house engineering teams. That can be granted to external outsourced mechanicals. The client or consultant might want to be involved in that process, to be signing off a whole lot of things that were contractually agreed on, and you're just signing off as you're handing over the project. So again, you're able to issue out access to those environments and work through that without saying, well, okay, I've got to be on site. I've got to chew heaps of man hours. That allows you to manage that process. And then last but not least, and we all do it on supplying equipment, we go on to that DLP period. Often that sits either 12 or 18 months, depending on how you're handling it and handing it over. That's got possibly just the in-house engineering side. It might have the external component side. I highlighted there, and this is, I wouldn't say it's factual information, but it's information that we've got from a lot of our clients. The approximate cost of going to site averages out to about $400 a trip. So every time you've got an engineer getting in his car and going to site, okay, it's costing you a minimum of $400, excluding travel time, excluding response to other clients, because that person's now chewed up, traveling, going, doing what he needs to do. And that all affects the performance of your organization. So imagine a world now where you've got a Tosibox device sitting in there. You're able to reduce that. You're able to reduce the travel time. You're able to reduce your response time to clients. So instead of going down and saying, I've got an hour's drive to you to have a look and understand what's going on. Oh, hold on a second. I've got a 10-minute response, and I've had a look what's going on. It needed a reset. There was a configuration change needed, and it's sorted out. So again, it's changing those business processes and not just taking the same vanilla approach that the industry's taken for many years. And against that vanilla approach, then you're trying to understand, well, I can't remain competitive because prices are coming down, and I can't do it for that price. You've got to do it differently. Then linked to the DLP, you'll notice below, I've got that highlight on all the different other components. The DLP covers subcontractors, consultants, in-house engineering, mechanical guys. And if we dig a little bit deeper into that, within the Tosibox technology, it allows you within the platform to now go and bring all of those users into your environment. And then against that, schedule with those users exactly what they're needing to do. So in the top case here, I've just copied out a rule that sits within our access group where you can now bring on access on time-based or role-based to say, okay, I'm going to come in at a certain time of the day. I'm going to come in for DLP period that I've just got access for the 12-month period. So where you've got HVAC people supporting assets for that DLP period, you can give them access just for the DLP period, okay? And done, finished, then it terminates and you carry on. So now we've covered the cybersecurity side. We've also covered an automated process in your business that you're not having to worry about it. You've set it up, fit and forget, and you're good to go. And then against that, if you're doing multiple sites for that same client, say for instance, you're doing HVAC across 20 sites, the screen below then shows what the access group looks like when it's finished, where you've got the possibility to name the site. You can give it a specific date that it should run until. On the left-hand side where it mentions keys are the user accesses. On the right-hand side where it mentions locks, those are the site devices. And the configuration to set that up is literally just drag it, a drop, and pull it into there, and done, you're good to go. And then against that, you're able to, on the left-hand side, bring in all those different sites that have got listed down there. Sorry, I've had to grey them out because it's from a client's architecture. Then where we've got the arrows going down, those are the different access groups. You can see on the first downward arrow, that's highlighting on just the naming of those access groups. The second downward arrow is then, what do you want in that access group? So are you needing users in that access group? Are you just needing sites to create a converged network? And the one I've got there, it's got 0 users. It's got 581 converged sites, and it's connected to a local LAN network to feed an application. So this is all built out in the same ecosystem. In the bottom arrow on the upward side, you can see there's an access group which is scheduled until the 24th of October next year. So that means there's one user allowed to access 2 sites, okay? And they've got that for the 12-month period. That's it, done, finished. So this allows you to set up all of that. From there, it's all managed within the technology. So you can walk away from this as a business owner and not have to worry about, I need to remember that net needs to be done there or that needs to be done there. And because the technology is mature, it's bulletproof in just working. So it's never a phone call, my software is not working. Typically, if it happens, it's because the client's updated something on their virus protection or their PC that's affected that process. From a point of view of the daily operations on how Tosibox works, it just works. Okay, so now I think that gives you a good understanding of the new business processes and how it comes into play. The importance here is our belief is it shouldn't end here. So why are you supplying new equipment, finishing the DLP period and walking away? You've got the relationship with the client. You've got an understanding on what that asset is and what it's doing. And for most of you, I'm almost confident that there's an SLA or service component afterwards. But what we see in a lot of organizations is because that's a different department, so DLP onto SLA and service is very disjointed. It's almost like, okay, it's no longer my job and responsibility. That's now the service department. And there should be some type of synergy and cohesion between those two. So in the next slide now, and I've just got to go down one more. Sorry, hold on a second. There we go. So in this slide now we start having a look at saying, well, what about the service side of the business? And that's where it comes in. We've got the 12-month period is up on DLP. The client's finished with his responsibility. And now we go to say, well, do we lose the client and the revenue? Or do we build it out into a seamless model that allows the client to then start taking advantages of your additional services? Okay, so the first question that I've got there under the service side is what's needed? Okay, we have some clients where it's only a reactive model. They're only looking for access my assets, check if everything's okay, and it's that typical time-based every 4 weeks, every 6 weeks, however long, and servicing that. There could be the physical site visit component. So a lot of what we talk to in service-driven organizations is, why does that person have to go to site on that cycle? Why can't we change that cycle? And every second cycle, it's a digital service where we're logging in and having a look at what's going on and reducing the cost of ownership of that client, but still achieving the same end result, still delivering the same end line. And a lot of what we've had in that space is, oh, the client wants to see us face to face. And yeah, maybe in one side, but on the other side, I'm sure if you say to the client, well, okay, we're reducing the amount of visits, but we're also going to reduce your cost of ownership and do it for you at a more competitive rate. Okay, the client goes, hold on a second, I'm interested in that. And that will make you more competitive. And in a lot of cases, possibly actually generate you more revenue. And when I talk about revenue, I'm talking about physical profit, not just generating gross profit. So it's understanding, is it a remote access client? Are you building a private network for them with convergence, with databases, with applications, and so forth? Then once that is understood in the ecosystem, then you can move it on to the SLA side of things. Obviously, the more you're doing for the client, the more there is in the SLA. But here you're able to then start having a look at those access control policies, role-based, time-based, how long is it got to be for, and whatever it may be. And within that, what I'm just going to do quickly is go back a slide and just show you, where was that slide now? Sorry. Okay, there we go, to that one. So this is then typically what happens in that environment for the user when you're starting to do these service-based approaches. And again, it's all driven around how it's configured, whether it's DLP or whether it's service. On the left-hand side is a login for the Tosibox user. That login is governed by a password, which the user has to put in for themselves. And this is where that two-factor authentication comes in. So this is not only software that's attached to the user's machine, allowing them to not move it or give it to someone else or manipulate it in any way. It's on their machine. They've got to log in with their user password as part of the security. And then against that, it comes into the top screen, which then links them onto the Tosibox platform and shows them exactly underneath what they're allowed to see. So where you can see those gray 3 locks underneath there are the different sites that they're able to connect to within their environment. And then going further, when they have a look at one of those sites, if you've then got a drop down to access the devices on each of those sites, again, these are all IP-based devices. It doesn't matter what device. It doesn't matter whether it's a layer 2 PACnet device or a layer 3 controller or whatever it may be. We handle all the different devices within the environment. If you're going on to our 300 or 600 series, you can have more complexity with VLAN management and multiple networks within this as well. Talk to us and we can show you how to do that. So this is a typical scenario now of where you're now granting that access for a site. It can be for an external mechanical contractor, or it could be for the customer to access their own sites. But you can see the granularity of what they can get down to. We can also define it down to site IP alone. So on the bottom here, where you've got all these green dots, if you choose to just have it for, say, the lighting circuit is the second last item, within the software, you can just define that IP, and then the client will be able to connect to that site and just see that IP. So again, that's based down to the role of the individual. If it's a lighting contractor and they want to see all the lighting controls on the 3 sites, then you can give them just access to that. Okay, so going back into that service component now we can start seeing from an SLA perspective how we had the DLP period, we had all the different players. When we go into SLAs, a lot of those players remain the same because the client wants to keep the same approach on in his ecosystem. It's just the agreement that changes there. Or it might be that some of them change slightly and there's a different mechanical contractor, but the approach and the access is exactly the same. It's just going and saying, well, okay, I'm removing Steve from the access group now, and I've got Jono that's come in because he's the new mechanical contractor. You're now giving Jono access to that access group. The access group already exists. Everything's in place, and now he's got access to see all the mechanical devices. So the whole process plays out in what you're needing to achieve to support your business model. And then from there, going to the who and what. So an important part when we have a look at the services side is people are just going into standard environments and they're just doing the basics. And when you do the basics, you get paid for the basics. Okay, so we're educating organizations to have a look. Well, you've got a cost of ownership with that client. In order to have a look at return on investments, in order to have a look at profitability, why not offer new revenue streams for these clients? So you've already got the hardware existing in the environment. You've got the user access. You might not have the virtualized infrastructure set up 100%. So it's again going and saying, well, okay, why stop? Sorry, get back onto there. There we go. Why stop at just the hub? Okay. And why not then build on a database or an application server? So in the same environment that you've already created, you already own in your ecosystem, you're using it, it's delivering value to you and your clients. Now you can have more value gained out of it by saying, well, okay, let's plug in a database component. You can choose, and I've just put some examples of different database collection components that we get involved in with clients. So it doesn't matter whether it's SQL, MQTT, Kepware, OPC, or whatever it may be in your ecosystem, we're compatible with all of it. These data collection applications and databases see our technology as the infrastructure to then allow that to all seamlessly flow through. And then against that, it's having a look at the applications. So we deal with different clients having different approaches. Some clients go and standardize on a database, and then they'd use at the bottom left Grafana for visualization, for instance, on an entry level. Other clients are having a look at the analytics side and using Coppertree, or using Clockworks, or using OnPoint, or using SkySpark. Compatible with all of it. It's a seamless process through. But why would you want to go and take like SkySpark, for instance, and manage it on 30 sites when you can bring it all through to a central point and manage at a central location, which again optimizes the whole processes. And then against that, you've got any application that you can build onto it. So whether you've got Schneider's EcoStructure, or you've got Niagara, or whatever it may be, wherever it's sitting in that process. So again, when we have a look at this, we have a lot of clients that talk at application level in the cloud, and they talk about cybersecurity. Unfortunately, they're only talking about cybersecurity within the cloud environment, but they haven't spoken about that edge to cloud cybersecurity. So they've got communication, it might be encrypted a bit, but they're not securing the edge. So remember things like firewalls, remember things like IT, OT segmentation. And then it's the communication. Is it secure by just encrypting it over a public internet connection? The answer to that is no. So it's having that edge to cloud connectivity for all of this to be secured from an end-to-end process. So yeah, I think from that perspective, we've pretty much got everything covered on today's discussion. I'm hoping that I've touched a couple points and given you a couple thoughts for where this could be applied to your business processes. And yeah, on behalf of Tosibox, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. And Matt and the Control Store team, it's great working with the team. Thanks for the opportunity to chat about it. And let's hope that the Control Store clients can take advantage of our future technologies.
No problem. Well, thank you very much, Mark. It's always interesting to go through some of the, what I'll call the more complex issues that we deal with in HVAC and the BMS world. But what I love about the Tosibox platform is that it is so simple to spec, to implement, to utilize. And I'll be frank, most of my customers utilize the product to avoid the building IT guy. In the something like a Tosibox lock 175, one Ethernet connection out to the network controller. So typically a Jace SIM card from your preferred provider, and you're online and you're done. It's safe, it's secure, and it's simple. But what I have loved about today's presentation is showing the wider application of the Tosibox infrastructure. So thank you for that this morning, Mark.
Excellent, Matt. Thank you for the time. Really appreciate it.
Not a problem. Looking at the display, we haven't had any questions come into the Q&A or the chat box. If there are any questions, now's the time to raise the hand. We'll give it a couple of seconds to see whether anyone does have any questions.
Obviously, I've covered it well.
That's it. Webinar where you get to the end where there aren't any questions. Clearly, the information provided covered everything. So thank you very much, Mark. Thank you to everyone that joined us live this morning. Like I said earlier, this was recorded. It will end up on the Control Store YouTube channel. But if you do have any further questions or queries, please feel free to contact the Control Store team, and we'll get those questions answered for you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, and have a good day.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Cheers. Bye.